Hello and welcome to Ben Ross's Conservatorium of Audio. I'm Ben Rosser, and today we're going to be having a look at using reverb effects. As with many different effects, there's a few different ways you can use reverb, whether you're trying to add something a little bit subtle to add a little bit of an ambient feel to a sound, or whether you're going to the complete extreme and trying to make something as wet as possible. There's a whole heap of different types of techniques you can use and a whole heap of different types of sounds you can come up with. To start us off, we've just got a bit of a simple drum loop happening. We've just used one of the Ableton Live built-in drum racks, and we've just thrown in some random MIDI data there just to get a bit of a beat, and we'll just have a quick listen to that one so you can hear what we've got happening. So you might just give that a little bit of a quick mix. You might bring the cymbals down a little, bring the kick and the snare up a little bit. Not very much punch in that kick, but it'll do for the moment. So when you use reverb, you can just quite simply chuck on a reverb and fire up a preset and get something happening that way. But you'll tend to find that if you spend a little bit of time building up a reverb using not just a reverb but multiple effects and tailor it using those effects to suit the particular sound that you're working with, you'll tend to get much better results. So because we've got our drum rack set up at the moment with all of our instruments in groups, as we can see, we've got our kick, our snare, our toms group, our hi-hats, cymbals, etc. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our drum rack, we'll open up our chains, show our return chains, and we're just going to create a return chain there. To make life a bit easier, we're not actually going to put the reverb on this return chain. We're going to pretend that we've got a whole mix happening and we want to be able to use that reverb with all of the instruments in the mix. So even though we've now got individual send controls for each of our groups, they're going straight into this return channel in the drum rack, which is then going straight to our drum rack main channel. Rather than that, we're going to send the audio from this return channel out to our main A return so that we can put our reverb on there, and that will allow us to then, if we've got all of our other instruments in our mix, to then be able to add a little bit of that reverb to all of those, not just our drums. So the reason why we've set this up inside the drum rack is to give us a bit more control over the individual sounds. For example, we might want more reverb on our cymbals, for example, and we do on our snare and our kick, because we want our snare and our kick to sit a little bit more up front. So that way this allows us to do it. So a nice simple way to set up a nice controlled reverb would be to start with an EQ. I'd then put the reverb after that. We might actually use one of my favourite reverbs. Just find that one, which is the Waves True Verb. Especially if you're after a bit of a realistic sound, this one can tend to do a really good job. We're just going to turn the direct sound off in that one, as we only want the reverb coming out of that return channel. If you were using it as an insert effect, you might have the direct turned on and blend some of the original in there. And finally, after the reverb, we're going to add a bit of compression. And I tend to find that this combination of these three effects tends to be the best place to start when building up a bit of a reverb. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to roll off some of the low ends, as reverb doesn't tend to work too well with bass frequencies. It can be used quite well as a technique sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't work too well either, more often than not. So we're going to avoid that one today. And we're also going to add a little bit of a boost up around the 8.5K mark, just to help bring out some of the airiness and the top end of the sound before it hits the reverb unit. So what we're going to do is we'll just turn off our main group channel there, and we might just send some of these instruments straight into the reverb so that we can hear what it sounds like straight up. And we can adjust these levels to suit after we've got our reverb sounding right. We might pull our kick down a little bit and our snare down a little bit. You can't hear it that well at the moment, but I'll just chuck some compression on here. Even without doing too much with the compressor, it really starts to bring out the reverb straight away. And you'll find by adjusting your threshold and your attack and release to suit the reverb and the way it tails off, you can actually get a really nice sound happening, especially if you want an intense sort of in-your-face, even 80s drum room sound reverb. You can tend to find you'll get that quite well with the compression on there. So we might just find a bit of a, maybe even a drum room. Just chuck that on there and we'll have a listen. As you can see, this one's a really nice preset to use for this sort of thing. It tends to work with the sounds quite well. Just going to increase the room size and the distance on that one. And also going to turn up the decay time a little, just to get that to fade out a little bit longer. So if we have another listen to that one. So we'll just bring down that return channel a little bit, bring our main channel back in. You can hear even on the top end of the kick, because we've got the bass rolled off, it's actually adding that nice bit of punchiness to it, which is quite good. We'll add a fair bit to the toms as we want those to sit back a little. Bring in our hi-hats. And you'll notice when you add it to the cymbals, you can usually end up pulling the cymbals up a little bit more in volume without them sounding too harsh as well. What tends to work quite well. And we don't seem to have any ride or percussion in there, so we might just stick with that for the moment. So this is our original sound. We might just add a bit of compression to that one to help bring that out a little bit. Also help control some of these unruly dynamics that we've got happening. So if we have a listen to that one without the reverb, we'll bring that reverb in. So we've got that tailored fairly well to suit that sound now. So as you can see, just a little bit of EQ followed by the reverb of your choice. And like I said, I tend to prefer this one for more realistic sounding reverb, but depending on what I'm working on, I do like to chop and change the effects that I use. So if I'm after something that sounds a little bit weird or a little bit different out of the ordinary, then I'll tend to always try and grab a reverb unit that will specifically produce that sound. So have a bit of a play with your different productions and different loops and samples you've got available, the different reverb effects you have available, and see what sort of stuff you can come up with. So I hope to see you again in another Ben Ross's Conservatorium of Audio tutorial. Thanks for watching.